What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Rise Up Rich podcast. I'm your host, Dave Haas, and I have a very special guest today. One of my very first guests and good friend of mine, Nevianna Maleyko. She is the owner of Carrots and Dates, and I always say that Nevianna had a very interesting path in her life because I've been on this spiritual path of spiritual growing in my life, and it's been like a 15-year journey for me. And it all started when I turned vegetarian and I started to have some real awarenesses in my life. And Nevianna owns Carrots and Dates, which is a vegan restaurant, the best vegan restaurant in the city. So if you guys get a chance, check that out. But she had a little bit more of a direct route, I would believe, on her spiritual path. And she probably will disagree that it was direct. But I always feel like she went to like the hard knock school and got a lot of information very, very quickly because it was critical for her. And I was almost kind of envious of her position in that because she was able to grow really, really fast. And you guys are super happy. You guys are super lucky, that we have her on the podcast because what she's gone through in her life and what she's been able to experience in a very, short period of time in the considerations of like a lifetime has been remarkable. And I'm super happy to have her on. So Nevianna, thanks for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to have you here and for you to kind of share your story with everybody. So I guess I'll start out with my first question. Let's just get like a little bit of background story of your life and why you started Carrots and Dates and just kind of take us through that process.
Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate you having me here. I'm really honored and you're doing such a good job. I'm really excited to be in the studio. Well, I can start with giving you a background about my life. I was born and raised in Eastern Europe, in Bulgaria. I lived there till I was 9 years old. And when, it was communist, it was hard. My parents decided to move and we packed our bags and moved to South Africa. And I lived in South Africa until I was 16 years old. And at 16, my parents discovered that that's not a place they want to live anymore. It was getting hard with apartheid ending and things were getting a little bit out of control there. They decided to try Canada. And we moved at 16 years old. That was an extremely difficult move for me. I never actually understood how hard it was for me until I kind of dug into it in my previous years of life. And I moved to Canada. At 16, now I'm 37 and I'm here. It's been 20 years. The way Carrots and Dates was started, if anybody asked me about 10 years ago that I was going to have a restaurant, 2 restaurants, I would have laughed in their face. I was really concentrating on going to school, finishing my graphic design degree, taking some, photography and being a high school teacher. That was really a big dream of mine. And when I graduated my university, I think about 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with my son. And it was pretty rough for me. Prior to finding out that I was pregnant, maybe a month prior to that, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And that was a pretty dark moment for me. I really went, hit rock bottom. I was 23 years old. Coming from a holistic background of living in Bulgaria, even now they still practice a lot of holistic ways of healing. The country is 2,000 years old, and the spirituality and being holistic there is pretty big. And I really wanted to heal this colitis on my own. I truly believed in my heart that I could heal it. At that time, I was, eating everything. I grew up for eating healthy food. I can't say I got sick because I was eating the wrong food. It's one thing that I know a lot of people say when they get sick. For me, growing up was like I lived off the land. Yes, I ate meat, but everything was really ethically raised. And my grandpa had a huge farm and we grew food on there and ate really, really well. My grandma made bread. Everything was very well. And coming here, we brought our values with us growing up. We never had canned food, never had pop or juice or sweets, things like that. I never had in my house. And I just thought, I'm going to heal this. When I was pregnant and during my pregnancy, I couldn't work. I was really sick. And I spent 6 months on the computer researching. In my research, I found that, okay, food must be killing me. Food is what I'm eating, all the meat and cheese and all these things, which wasn't a lot of, must be killing me. And I just went on a journey of changing my diet. And because I had a background of photography and everything, I started documenting the food that I was creating and the food that I was making while having my own business at home of photographing kids, which I hated. I just did not enjoy. And my husband always pushed me to do something with food. And I just one day woke up and decided to end my photography career and start doing something with food. And I remember in January of 2012, I was cooking for one family, and by May, I was cooking for 60 families.
Oh, wow.
We were pushing quite a bit of food out of our house. And that's how Carrots and Dates was birthed. The customers were just sick and tired of coming to our home, and they said, "You're going to open something." So I did. There's so many stories. I probably have to come back here again to tell you how that all came about. It was very spiritual as well.
Right.
And we opened up this cafe. But the intention behind opening this cafe was fear. Fear of not getting sick again, which I was always sick. I wasn't really able to heal the colitis. I was eating great food. I was juicing. I was doing everything, but it wasn't helping me at all. I was actually getting sicker. Mm-hmm. I wasn't getting well. And really, Carrots and Dates is here today with an old intention of, I can't eat anywhere. I'm sick and tired of going to restaurants. I have so much fear. I don't know what's in this food. I'm going to create my own.
Right.
And because I created my own and I documented it online, people really liked it. So it was a curse and a blessing in a way of how it was created. But the biggest intention behind the creation was fear, because I was so afraid of eating anywhere that I just created something amazing, and with great ingredients and great ethical recipes for people to use that people really loved. So the business was born. It was fast and it grew dramatically. I think one year we had 400% growth in our business.
Yeah, I think you touched on a few really important parts there for me as well in my own businesses. When I started the businesses out, they were all coming from the wrong place. It was out of desire, out of trying to heal from my childhood past and all these kinds of things. And now when I look back, I can go, oh, I can see how all of this was created because of that. But now I've been able to make a shift in my business, which I think you have been able to do as well.
Absolutely.
You started to look at your business in a different light, and I did that exact same thing in my business, where I stopped focusing on getting. This was for me. I stopped focusing on getting. I started focusing on giving and what value I could bring to my customers. And just that one little shift changed my entire business. Since I made that shift 7 years ago, we've steadily increased our sales by 30% for 7 years. Mm-hmm. So as far as the spiritual path and my spiritual awakening, it's helped my business tenfold. It's been such an amazing turnaround. And you have the similar path, but just a little bit of a different story with your business. So if we fast forward now to, I think it was like 5 years ago now, right? I think it was that you got your diagnosis.
It was 3.5.
3.5. Oh, geez. See, that's how healthy you are now. I can't even. I think it seems so far away from me.
Yeah.
But I just want to share a story with you, and I think I've shared it with you before, but I remember one time, because you and I have known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Probably 10, 15 years, I think, maybe. Whenever you open up Carrots and Dates, when I started to get to know you. And I came into Carrots and Dates, and I was talking about going on the color run. And do you remember the story?
I do.
So I said, you should come and do the color run with us. And you said, I'm going to have to take a look at it and see what's in that paint that the people that are throwing at you and all this. And at that moment, because I had spent so much time with my mentor, Andrew Facca, and I was becoming more aware of how fear and these types of things affected your health, affected the way you think about things, affected your behaviors. And I tuned into it in that moment, and I was like, that's interesting. She's running this healthy restaurant, but she has a fear of what chemicals are in the color run. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't long after we had that conversation that you experienced another big change in your life. Mm-hmm. And this is when I think you really really dug deep. I mean, I think that's the understatement of the year, is digging deep there, because you went on a crazy deep dive to get to some real roots of your issues real fast. And I think that is what a lot of people are just missing, is just having the courage to go there. I'll give you just a little brief example, and then I'm going to turn it back over to you. You know, when my mother died when I was 9 years old, my mom died of cancer. She was diagnosed when I was 6.5, 7, and she had colon cancer. And I came to the realization, actually, even recently, that I still haven't dealt with that grief. And there's a reason that I didn't deal with the grief. It's because it's scary as hell to go there.
Absolutely.
You know, like I remember as a 9-year-old walking into the funeral home and just like breaking down, like the as sad and as broken down as you possibly can be. I could barely even stand up. That's how much grief there was. So from that point forward, I didn't want people to see me like that ever again. And so I just kept on suppressing it, repressing it. And it wasn't until recently on this spiritual path that I've been on that I said, I got to go back there. But it was nerve-wracking because who wants to be that low ever again?
You have to relive it.
Right. So I had to go back there, and I'm still actually working on it. But this is what I feel that you did in, like, you know, I've been holding on to that grief for 30 years, you know. So what I feel like you were able to really just go there repetitively and just have the courage to face your issues over and over again until you were relieved of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me just turn it back over to you and just maybe just share your story of your diagnosis. And if you're comfortable with that, and just let me know, let the people know, like, what were the critical factors that you had to come to the realizations after that happened?
Well, when I opened Carrots and Dates, which was 5.5 years ago, I was not well. I was living in a life of, I can use like an explanation of, I crawled out of, let's say this was when I was younger. Like you said, you didn't want anyone to see you as this grieving kid. So you kind of put a mask on and pretended nothing was wrong. But behind the mask was all the truth, which you just locked up and ignored, which it doesn't go away. I think at a young age, I did that. I put a mask on and kind of crawled out of my skin, and it was going to take me through my life. But my true essence, my true self. And I thought, because of being so true, no one's going to like me. I have to be this different human. And I remember so fast forward, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015, when I went into meditation and saw what the cancer represented, it represented this fakeness of me. It represented this like smoking, stiletto looking hot bitch. Yeah. You know, that it's not who I am. I'm like this, like, but true essence is me, no shoes on, walking around, hugging people, loving, crying of love and joy, and just tears pouring, and just helping people and doing all these things, which I just kind of shoved under the carpet and needed to be this, you know, rich looking, awesome person. And it didn't do me well, you know? So when I was diagnosed with colitis at 23, I tried really hard for 9 years to heal it, and nothing worked for me. I went to doctors and medications, and they wanted to put me on things that, like this IV treatment, and I refused those things. I just knew personally it was not going to help me. I thought food is the only thing. But in the midst of all that, I developed a food disorder because of fear of eating the wrong food, and then that food will make me sick. So I looked at food as an enemy. Right. Because really nothing was healing me. At the end, by the time I found the lump in my breast, I was eating bananas. It was so crazy because I was afraid to eat bread. I was afraid to eat meat. I was afraid to eat legumes. I was afraid to eat grains. It was just like, what do I eat? Just vegetables. My body was not digesting anything. I looked like I was 9 months pregnant. I couldn't go into even 2 weeks without having a reaction to this colitis. And everyone has an autoimmune disease. They know exactly what I'm talking about. It's crippling. It's painful. It's crippling. It's like a shadow that never leaves. And I remember every time I would flare up, and obviously you go to the bathroom for colitis, and I would see blood in my stool, which was 9 years every day. I would go, what am I doing wrong? Pretty much telling myself, what am I such a bad person? What am I doing wrong? Like, why am I so wrong? Why is something so wrong with me? And when I opened Carrots and Dates about 5 months before that, after that, my mom was almost killed in a car accident in Europe, which I let my business and left the country for 6 weeks. I lived in Bulgaria, pretty much by her side. She had a 5% survival rate. She survived, which is a miracle in its own.
Yeah,
Coming
amazing.
home, at the same time, we also lost my grandpa, who was helping us take care of my mom. And at that time, I found the lump in my breast.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, that's weird. I eat so healthy. Why would I get that? And it turned out to be cancer. It was probably the worst thing that anyone could ever tell me. I hit extreme rock bottom, but it was such a gift. It was such a gift to me. And at that time, that moment, I don't know what to do. Something just told me, call Andrew.
Right.
But something really interesting happened to me about 3 weeks prior to that. I was going into the hospital to get the biopsy. And for some reason, I had to be alone because everything happened so fast. And I was sitting in the hospital bed and shaking. And just, at that time, I was atheist. I don't believe in anything bigger or greater spirituality. I was like, oh, this is crap. Because I was so hurt and in pain. And I was laying in that bed shaking. And I remember saying, if there is a God, then F you. Because I can't believe this is happening to me. I'm trying so hard every single day to heal. And now I'm going to die of breast cancer. This is so unfair. And at that moment, I felt this hot heat come through my body from my head. And it was so hot that I just had to lay there and surrender to it. And in that moment, I saw there's a light in my chest that was replaced. Honestly, at that moment, I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, what is this? I actually heard it be replaced, and I felt this great tube in my chest replaced as a light. And at that moment, I got this kind of a download, and it said, if you walk the same walk and talk the same talk, your light will eventually dim. But if you change everything about yourself, you will live.
Yeah.
I thought, crazy. And at that moment, I had a profound, intentional, emotional decision that I'm going to change everything I can to live. Mm-hmm. And if you actually look in the Bible, and I have to bring the God into this a little bit because it's a huge thing for me. It says, choose life or death. And we can choose death with our anger, resentment, and pain and trauma that we haven't lived with, or we can choose life by facing it. And at that moment, I thought, wow, I just received a huge gift that I'm not sure anyone receives. I need to take this and run with it. And it's very interesting to say this, that so a week later, I got diagnosed. They told me I had breast cancer, and I called Andrew, and he came to my house, and he told me, he says, and this is profound because I think everybody that goes into a trauma, they need someone to go in there and give them hope. And what Andrew gave me was hope. Mm-hmm. And he said, you will heal this colitis, and you're going to heal this cancer, and you're going to help so many people. And I looked at him and I thought, this guy's freaking out to lunch.
Yeah, right.
I thought he was smoking something.
Yeah, right.
But I was like, I'm going to take what he says because I have nothing else to believe right now. Yeah. And in that night, he taught me how to pray, how to meditate, how to just at least stay with an intention of healing. And I got to work as soon as he left.
Yeah.
And I haven't still let go of that practice, which is huge for me. I did develop more practices, different things as my path went on, but it was big for me. But that day when the diagnosis came, I knew that it wasn't just food.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had created this company around healing and food. And now I'm the face of health, and I have 2 diseases that I have no idea what I'm going to deal with.
Right. And I think I'm just going to interrupt you there for a minute because I think you touched on something like truly, truly important. There's 2 things that I just want you to elaborate on. One was you're laying in the hospital bed and you just have this moment of surrender.
It was a huge surrender.
Right. And so that goes hand in hand with the next point, which is that we're all of us, not all of us, but a lot of people in this world are focused on the physical body.
Absolutely.
You know, what foods can I eat? How can I go to the gym? What exercises can I do? You know, all to get healthier. But most of us are missing the other 2 aspects, which is mind and spirit, and mainly spirit.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
And the things that we had talked about earlier about how the intentions came from fear and how my desire for success came from shame and all these kinds of things. This is what everyone's avoiding. And like I said, they're avoiding it because it's a scary place to go. But if you have the courage to go there, and it all begins with surrender. And if you have the courage to go there and to surrender, then this is when the true healing happens at all levels. So one, if you could just maybe elaborate on the idea of surrender, because I think there's a lot of confusion around it. So if, I'll give you my take and then you can play off of it. But ultimately, I believe that there comes a point in your life when you have to, surrender your entire life over to a higher power. And, I avoid using the word God because people get paranoid about it, but you have to believe in something higher than yourself.
Yeah, it's God or universe or spirit. Everybody has a different...
Family, love, whatever it may be. But it has to be a belief in something higher than yourself. And then you have to have the realization that that thing that is higher than you has both your best interest and the best interest of the world at heart. So ultimately, if you surrender to that power, you're going to be okay. The next part of surrender, though, to me, is the letting go process and having the courage to face your soul. Because that is... every time you heal from something in the past, it's a form of surrender. So that's my interpretation of surrender. But I'd be interested to get your take on surrender.
So when I first started this path, I really didn't understand surrender. It kind of came organically to me.
Right.
And when people are saying, you surrendered, you did this. And I said, oh, did I? Okay, I had no idea. It was just at a place of, I'm listening now, and a place of, everything that I've ever done has not worked for me. So I'm going to give all my power to something greater that I have no idea what existed.
Sorry, Nevianna's phone's buzzing at us, but it's all right.
And that was so funny. And I just kind of said, every morning when I woke up, I was just so thankful that I was here. And I said, paint my road, because I have no idea where I'm going. Paint my road and I'll walk it. And this is my intention. I want everything that does not do me well to be out of my life. And it's really interesting because I lost best friends. I lost employees. I lost really crazy things in my life. And it was just a part of the letting go. And one really interesting thing for me was that everything that I was doing was not working for me because I was getting in the way of this intelligence to heal, this intelligence to help me. And it's hard because I had to literally hit rock bottom almost when it's too late to realize this.
Right.
And I just want to stress to people that we don't have to go there.
Yeah, and you struck on a question I wanted to ask you, is that, you were able to go there quickly because it was critical. But what does a person do that hasn't hit rock bottom and doesn't have that pressure that you had to heal? Where do they begin? How do they come to these awarenesses that you came to without, having to go as low as you had to go?
I think the courage to becoming a better person and understanding that, why do I have anger? Why do I have frustration? Why am I jealous? Why do I have all these toxic behaviors of like shopping or smoking, excessive drinking every single day? Gossiping is also a number.
Yeah.
And just realizing what you're numbing and finding a coach or a therapist and understanding that they are not going to fix you, but they're going to give you feedback and bring you back onto the road of healing if you swerve away. This is where I think coaching and therapy is really beneficial. I'll probably do it until I'm 95 years old. Because I just hit a roadblock in my life and had to find a psychotherapist to get me back on track.
Right.
And do I get dependent on them? No. But I'm there with courageously going there to face it.
Yeah. And I think, and sorry to interrupt, but I definitely think that you hit the nail on the head with that. You need a guide. And because I have a coaching practice, you're getting into coaching as well. And for me, having a good mentor was like the critical factor to my spiritual awakening, and actually helped me in all areas of life, business, relationships, everything. But one of the guys I coach now, I said, you might need to come to this coaching for the rest of your life. And I was kind of joking with him, but it might not be me. You might have to go seek another coach that is at a different level. But
absolutely, I
can see how having a guide at all times is just so critical. And I think the biggest thing that comes from, having a guide, and actually even just listening to a podcast like this, is the awareness. If you start to have the awareness that these behaviors, living in states of anger, gossiping, judging, if you have the awareness that those states need to be corrected, that's when change begins to happen. It all starts with awareness.
And even with my business, as soon as I got diagnosed, I said to myself, I'm going to live a life of integrity. And I started realizing how many things I lied about. First of all, to some of my customers, I would not let them know that I'm still sick.
Right.
And I was like, oh yes, everything's great, everything's good. But meanwhile, I'm flared up to the maximum. I look like I'm 8 months pregnant. I need 13 to 14 hours of sleep every night. I'm still waking up angry and frustrated. But everything's fine. I had that mask on to pretend like, because I own Carrots and Dates, that everything was fine. And another one was, and you see this a lot in business, is not being integrative with money.
Yeah.
Is, oh, here's $20 cash, here's 30, I won't put this in my till. But that is just a small little choice that you make that's not even about money. It's about being a victim. This world owes me, so I'm going to steal and I'm going to cheat and I'm going to do all these things so that I get my way. It wasn't even about me not claiming this money. So I really started living with integrity and building boundaries of, if someone says something to me that hurt me, I would go into their uncomfortable place and talk to them, call them and say, hey, listen, what happened here? Maybe I don't understand how you meant it, but it hurt my feelings. And I want to let you know that this is how I feel. 90% of the time they go, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. But because I now built this boundary to stand up for myself, which is self-love, I now create an understanding. If, let's say you said something right now that I never understood and it kind of hurt me and I left and I was like, screw Dave, I'll never go on his podcast again.
Right.
Or I came back and said, hey Dave, thank you for inviting me. What you just said kind of upset me. Can we talk about it? I don't have to carry that energy with me.
Yeah.
And I believe we're 90% energy and like 10% physical.
Yeah.
And in this world, we're trying to fix the 10% of the physical that's gone wrong. But it is because our spiritual is all ignored, and it's not that something you can actually physically taste or touch.
Yes.
And we feel that we can't go there. And when I got diagnosed with breast cancer, I was broken, but something in me said, heal your soul and your body will heal. And I thought, okay. But it's still, every day when I wake up, and it's still like food disorder, trauma still come to me at times. Delicately, someone triggers me and, these things come to me. I will notice that and I go, what did I ignore here? And why am I going back to the physical? Yeah. I have to really go and close myself off for maybe a couple of hours. And this is what works for me, is stay in the awareness of the energy, of the anger, of the resentment, of the pain, and see how it wants to puppet me. Yeah. At the end of the day, for me, what I've discovered was true level of self-hatred that got me to where I was. I hated myself for having the hard life. I hated people for doing bad things to me. But mostly it was I hated myself for kind of brushing it off. Yeah. And for you, like, let's say I grew up in a bit of an abusive household. I hated the fact that my dad would hit my mom and then she would forgive him for it. So, but I did the same thing. It wasn't really forgiveness. It was just like kind of brush off the anger and resentment and try to move on with life. Yeah. And then I developed self-hatred for creating that. So there was a lot of self-hatred for not allowing myself to be me, because I came out of the skin and went into this like other skin of smoking cigarettes, all these behaviors, and which were led by the need for love, the need for acceptance, the need for acknowledgement, especially need for acknowledgement for kids who didn't have parents who acknowledge them. We try to reach areas in our life to be like, I need to be the best at running. I need to be the best owner. I need to show that I have the best car. It's acknowledgement from the materialistic world. But that's a bottomless pit. Yeah. If we drive 7 Beamers and have 900 best restaurants, sure, people are going to say you're great, but when you don't feel great in your heart, in your soul, in your spirit, then it's a bottomless pit in our lives.
Yes.
Yeah, for me it was really understanding that food was not everything, and I had to dig deeper into something really much bigger. And I remember when everything kind of started falling into place, when you kind of just give up control and say you surrender your life to, I say, God, how interestingly people come into your life And a few people at that time came into my life. And I remember one coach I was coaching with, he told me, you have to go backwards in order to go forward. And I thought, this is kind of crazy, because I'm just here to get over my fear of cancer.
Right.
And as we dug deeper into my painful moments, it was like exploding. And I went through different spiritual healers and helpers who got me there, because I could feel, I needed more. And I remember as I chipped down and all the stuff at the end, it was just so much suppressed anger, extreme amount of suppressed anger towards the world and towards myself, which manifested in resentment and manifested in so many different ways. And I looked at myself as I had a backpack full of rocks, and this was all the pain that I carried. That there was actually, as life gave me circumstances, I had no room to deal with it, because I had so much stuff. And then that backpack represented my body. Like, my body was so heavy with illnesses and like heaviness. And that heaviness represented my cell. The way I looked at my cell was that there was 20% anger, 20% sadness, 30% resentment, 80% anger, 10% jealousy. And there was 1% left for love, which is the healer. And with love comes joy, compassion. And I really had to detox these things out of my body. And it was a pretty interesting road. I spent days dry heaving, walking mountains, walking forests by myself, crying. And this is just an internal job that you do for yourself. Really, no one actually understands the path but you. And even I can sit here, go blue in the face to explain to people what I had to go through, but it was just my own path. And I say to people, I could go on my deathbed tomorrow and die, but I will have no regrets, because I really feel so light. And I tell this to my husband all the time. I say, well, if tomorrow is your last day to live, what would you regret? For me, it's spending time with my kids, cuddling them, giving compassion to people, loving them, giving time to myself. And these are things that I wake up every day and tick off my little list. And I don't really leave my house if I don't at least do half of them. And I have an intention every single day, cuddle my child, do something healthy for my body. And as I was doing all this, I saw profound healing in my body. Profound. I had the colitis disappeared. I started feeling better. I started needing like 7 hours of sleep. I became so much, and every year I've become better, And the profound thing is that there's no scan or test that will tell me this. I know if I go for it, it will come back negative, because they have. It's the internal knowing that I am okay. The belief. The belief that I am okay, and that I am a good person to myself.
And I just actually did a video on Instagram about your belief system and based around positive thinking and manifestation. And after the movie The Secret came out, everyone was clipping out pictures of what they wanted in their life and holding them in their wallets or putting them on their walls. And just to say I'm going to start thinking more positive, it's not going to work.
No.
And the reason being is because all feelings are connected to thoughts. So, one feeling could create thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of thoughts throughout your lifetime. So if you don't go and deal with that feeling and truly let it go, or whatever you got to do to be free of that feeling, you're constantly going to be fighting against thousands and thousands of thoughts. So this is ultimately what you're saying here, I think, is just that you got to go there, right? And you went there on so many levels. And I think what would be really cool now, because as I'm listening to you, I'm going, Jesus, like she did so much. And I can imagine for someone listening who's just diving into spiritual growth, they're probably going like, oh my God, like this is overwhelming. And I actually get that a lot because I host that Tuesday night group. And a lot of times new people, they're like, I just don't know where to begin. I just don't know where to start. So I think, as we're coming, to the close of the podcast here, I think what would be a really cool idea, and I don't know if it's going to work or not, we'll just kind of bounce it back and forth with each other. I think we should just go back and forth between you and I and just give a few ideas where people can start, or even if they're further along in the journey. But like, let's try and pinpoint some of the critical factors for both of us. So you say one, I'll say one, and we'll just go back and forth, because I'm sure a lot of ours are similar. So if we do, 5 or 10, I think it's going to cover a lot. So do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
You can start.
Okay. So for me, which is one that Nevianna already talked about, was integrity. I think that just having the awareness that you're not being truthful with yourself, with other people,
Absolutely.
is huge. But integrity has many layers.
Many.
Yeah. So it's not just about saying, I'm not going to tell lies anymore. It's also about not agreeing with somebody just to be a people pleaser, and because that was a big one for me. I was a people pleaser. And when I used to just agree when people had, like for example, someone would say, like Breeze, my wife's husband, my wife's father-in-law said, you know what, you should bring espresso into your restaurant. And like, my restaurant is not a place where you have espresso. And before I would just be like, yeah, maybe I'll do that, just to like please him. But now, because I'm living a life of integrity, and this is another layer of integrity, I'll say to him, nah, I don't think that's going to work in my restaurant. And so, but even all of these little tiny things were just things that I was just not being true to myself, and what I came to realize on, peeling back these layers of integrity is that people actually respect you more when you give your honest, true opinion.
Yeah.
No one wants a yes man in their lives. Like, when you watch a movie where there's a character who speaks their mind, and usually it's like kind of like this brutally honest type of character, we're drawn to them. We're like, oh, that person's just so straight to the point. Well, that's ultimately what integrity is you be true to yourself, but I just believe that you don't do it. Honesty doesn't have to be brutal, and you say the same as just, speak your truth, but be kind while you do it. So integrity, for sure, for me, was like my number one. Stop telling lies, stop cheating on girlfriends, stop cheating on taxes. Another one for me was with my employees. Back in the day, it's like, I used to keep their vacation pay off their checks, and if they never came and got their vacation pay, I was like, well, they never came and got it.
Yes.
It's like, what the hell am I doing? Now it's like I attach their vacation pay to every check, and I make sure every single employee gets paid for every single hour that they worked, and just that change, it shifted the whole culture of Treehouse. And I didn't explain what I was doing to my employees. I just shifted it, and they all felt it.
And probably you don't even have to say anything. Most of your employees don't steal from you.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't have to do anything. My costs stay exactly where they're supposed to be. And it's all because of the energy and the intention that I have. And I think they just pick up on it. They don't even know they're picking up on it.
That's a spiritual world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So integrity for me, that would be one. What would be your
For me, one big one, self-forgiveness. So the way this works is everyone goes, how do I self-forgive? I don't know. Oh, I'm sorry. But it's actually, for self-forgiveness is again being brutally honest with your feelings. I can give an example. Let's say you woke up one day and you went to the bar and you got really, really drunk, and something bad happened to you as a female, or maybe someone stole your purse or you got raped, something kind of a trauma. You'd go home and say, man, why would they steal my purse? Why would they rape me? This is so crazy. And blame that person for doing the bad thing. But the real truth behind it all is that you're actually really angry with yourself for getting that drunk and allowing that to happen. So you can go a layer below that and say, oh my goodness, there's actually self-hatred here for something like that to happen. Well, now you might say, well, I didn't want cancer. How can I be mad at myself for doing that? I'm just giving a different analogy for self-forgiveness. And you can go under that and say, oh, I forgive myself for knowing that I shouldn't be drinking that much. Or I forgive myself for driving and texting and hitting that human. There's so many different things. And when you go into self-forgiveness, then you can actually forgive the other person.
Yeah.
And that's a big one that we have to really sit with ourselves for, and maybe ask for some help to dig into that truth. And self-forgiveness was one of the big ones for me, because the root of all my suffering was self-hatred.
Right.
And hating myself for having the life that I have.
And how, I guess, and I know that for me it would be like just to go there to those feelings, but how would you go about self-forgiving?
Well, self-forgiveness to me is a ritual. It's something that, again, I do on my own for myself. For me, because the type of person that I am, my battery gets charged when I'm alone.
Yeah.
I need to spend time in the forest. I need to go out in nature. I need to cry and release. And in those moments, I find courage to dig into the truth. Every human can do this. We can't drive fast in our car chewing gum and listening to music and hope that because we're running 10 minutes late for an appointment, we can find this essence.
Yeah.
For me, it was like waking up at 4 a.m, being courageous enough to wake up at 5 and walk the streets at really late and not be afraid of these kind of things, and asking for help, asking like God, spirit, out there, nature, whoever you are. My intention is to figure this out. I want to self-forgive. And for me, it's writing. I've started writing poetry. English is my second language. I would have laughed in someone's face if I had to write poetry. And hugging myself, kissing my arms, like just being like I'm a small little child.
Yep.
And the small little child made a mistake, and now her mom has come to find her and tell her that it's okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
that's super powerful.
I do that a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. When I
Right.
find myself in anger and resentment, which still rise up for me at times, I go right into how would I treat a little child if she came to me with this problem? And then I treat myself that way
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah, and that's the same technique I use for letting go. Is, if I identify a feeling, let's say it was shame, I go back there, visualize that child, and be like, what did this child want to say if he was truly allowed to let these feelings go? Because as a kid, I wasn't allowed to let those feelings go because I didn't have the outlet. I didn't have a parent saying, "What's wrong? Like, tell me, like, what's happening." I just had to figure out how to deal with it on my own. So now I just go back to that spot and I say, I look at myself as a young kid and I say, like, what's going on? Like, tell me about it. And then that allows me to begin to release that feeling and release all the power that it's holding over me, right? So, yeah, no, awesome. I love that. Self-love is huge.
I bet you now if someone really is touched by what we just said, is probably has tears in their eyes.
Yeah, definitely.
Because through my coaching practices, every time I coach someone and we bring in the inner child, we have pretty profound breakthroughs.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so 1 is integrity, 2 is self-love. For me, the third, I think one of the major shifts for me was taking full responsibility.
Yes.
I had to come to this point in my life where I had to take full responsibility for every single thing that led me to this certain point. And when I was looking at that spot, when I was really digging deep, I was at a very low point in my life. So I think that's what kind of forced me to make this shift was I had to take full responsibility. So it was no longer the government that was making me unsuccessful, my business partners, my employees. It was no longer my parents. My mom died when I was young. My dad was kind of like an absentee parent. So I was constantly playing like this role of the victim, and I was in the state of apathy where I was kind of always like waiting for someone to rescue me. And then when I finally came to this realization that I am the only one that is responsible for this. There was no one else besides me. Even the way I chose to deal with the death of my own mother, by moving into this place of victimhood.
Yeah.
Because I was getting a payoff from it. Every time someone would say to me, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about your mother, poor kid, pat me on the back, give me a hug," I was getting a little bit of a payoff from it. So by taking full responsibility, I began to let go of that payoff and began to take control back over my own life. Actually, taking full responsibility for me was one of the most empowering things that I ever did, because once I really truly felt it. Now, you can say you can take full responsibility, but when you really feel that you are in charge of your own life, you come to the realization that if you were able to get yourself to this negative place because it was all your fault, what can you do now that there's no other outside factors that's going to affect you? The only thing standing in your way of achieving whatever you want to achieve is yourself. Yeah. So that was huge for me, was taking back responsibility, or taking full responsibility and taking back my power.
For me, I'm going to now add to that, was one big one, take full responsibility. The way I worked with that is I gave my power to so many people, because let's say it's becoming a mom, the house needed to be cleaned, laundry needed to be done. So I pushed my desires and what I wanted to do every day under the carpet, and that created self-resentment. So what I encourage people to do now is when they wake up, and they can try and do this for 21 days or 63 days, that's when you change a habit, is waking up and writing down 4 things you want to achieve today that are just for you. for just for you. And with that intention every single day, just by putting it on paper at first thing in the morning after, I have a ritual in the morning where I wake up, I light a candle and I pray and I sit and I just enjoy my essence of being me. Sometimes take a bath. I say to people, sometimes pick your nose. Whatever you want to do for you in the morning is take that 1 hour. For me, sometimes I needed 4 hours because I had years and years of ignoring myself. And I just write down what I really wanted to achieve that day for me. One is intentionally cuddle and spend time with my children. You can really find yourself on your cell phone and ignoring their needs. Another one is take a walk, Another one is really understand what kind of food I want to eat today for my body. Or working out was a really important thing for me. And just, it doesn't have to be something intensive, but something that will bring meaning and I would be happy. And if you just do 4 things or 5 things or 2 things every day that bring you joy and happiness to your heart, your mood and your energy field will change.
Yeah, that's amazing, because you know what? So many of us are caught up in writing to-do lists for what we got to do for the world.
Yes.
We don't have a to-do list for what we need to do for ourselves. So I think that's really awesome. I'm going to actually implement that into my own life, because I think that's a real big shift that will happen for people.
And through that, you'll also start understanding your values.
Yeah.
Like what really you value. So then next time someone asks you to go on a trip for 3 days to somewhere, and you go, well, this is gonna, I won't be able to be here for my children because something is happening in their school, and this is really meaningful to me because I've noticed it's really meaningful. Sorry.
That's right.
It's really meaningful. Then you'll say no to that trip, because staying home and spending that quality time for your kids' music recital is going to be more meaniful to you.
Yeah, and I think too, and another great thing you said is like identifying what is meaningful to you, right? Like a lot of us don't know. We've been kind of programmed by society of what we think is meaningful to us. Like you said, like stiletto shoes and driving a BMW. That's what we think is meaningful. But when we really get down to who we truly are, that's when we start to realize, that maybe that stuff's not that important to us. So we'll do one more each, and then we'll pretty much wrap it up here. But there's 2 things that I want, because there's just so much stuff that I'd like to get across. I'm really digging deep here, and that's good. But one for me, and I'm just going to say the first one is that I think you hit the nail on the head that you got to get quiet with yourself. I love the analogy of people, like, if you're not getting quiet on a daily basis, you're basically like driving a car down the road at 100 miles an hour with the gas pedal to the floor, and you're doing that 7 days a week, 24/7. And if you continue to drive a car like that, eventually it's going to begin to break down. So I found for me, just even if I only meditate for 3 minutes, it has healing properties for me. So it was huge meditation, getting quiet. Like I think that is just so important to just get there. And then my next point, which I think is another key factor, and I've talked a lot about this, so I'm not going to elaborate on it, but it's gratitude.
Absolutely.
You've got to be expressing gratitude on a daily basis. And then there's going to be a shift. And I've talked about the shift for me. It's no longer about just writing it on paper. I experience gratitude in every single moment of my life. I don't even have to write it down anymore. I just do it because I enjoy it. But I'm grateful in all moments, everywhere, everything that I do. It's just on in my brain. It's like a switch that's been turned on and I can't turn it off, and I don't want to, but it's like, I'm grateful right now to have you on this podcast. I'm grateful that I have a studio to be able to record a podcast. I'm grateful I have the means to buy the equipment to do this. This is what plays in my mind at all times. And that's why I say, if truly living in the state of gratitude is a complete game changer. It gets you focused on what you have and stop focusing on what you don't have. So I'll let you wrap it up with one more critical factor.
There's just so many. I want to use a very easy one for someone to start, doing this work, because we all see ourselves as victims. Not all, but we have it in us, see ourselves as victims and not enough. We're always trying to find value and worth on the outside. And everything is found on the inside. And the only way you can actually find it is through spending time alone.
Yeah.
And finding the right people to help you through it that feel right. And it's really important to start understanding our feelings, because when I've coached a few people, when you ask them, and I've interviewed hundreds of people, tell me a little bit about yourself, they go, this is such a hard question. But when you ask them, tell me about your mother, they can tell you an hour.
Right.
Because they observe and listen, and they can tell you pinpoints they don't like about them or like about them, but you don't know anything about ourselves. And spending the time, especially in the mornings, sure, I can tell you to do it. But number one really crucial thing is consistency.
Yeah.
You have to be consistent. If you stand up today and say, I'm going to do this, you're only going to last 3 days. And then it falls off the wagon, and then you build anger towards yourself because you can't achieve. And that just gets all added to your little backpack filled with rocks. And actually just sit down and say to yourself, can I actually do this? Can I wake up every single morning and spend 20 minutes with myself? Or even if you're a beginner, spend 5 minutes with yourself and just be consistent.
Yeah.
That's why people achieve really great things when it's crucial. They have consistency because they're scared that if they're not consistent, they're going to fall back into that trap again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if I could tattoo this on my forehead, I would just remind people just to be consistent with their intentions and to really understand what they're telling themselves that they can achieve, and just to do it, to be consistent. If you say, okay, my goal today is to write 3 great things about myself in the morning, be consistent. Yeah. Put it on a calendar and put a cross every single day when you do it. I think for me, what really helped me with healing my soul and being here today is being consistent with, don't get me wrong, my consistency is like a report card. I have to get 80% of it, not 100. No one can do 100%. Yep. But I'm consistent with my what I eat. I'm consistent with my workouts. I'm consistent with my self-love. I'm consistent with facing these uncomfortable places that I need to have to travel the road on, because those are roadblocks. I can't continue going where I'm going if I have roadblocks of unhealed trauma and unhealed pain. And with that, you really achieve your greatness. But another crucial point I do want to say, if you want to be consistent, you have to see yourself in the future. You have to create an identity of who you want to be in the future and try 80% or 90% of the time to reach that. And that is, next to those 5 things you want to achieve in the day, write 5 things how you want to show up in the day. Today, I want to show up as a grateful, integrity-filled, honest human who wants to hug and love everybody. But just writing that down, you will show up as that person. Yeah. But we wake up so fast in the morning, grab out to-go coffee, drive to Tim Hortons for breakfast, rush home to take our kids to all these places they need to be. We have 0 time to spend with ourselves and intentionally try to show up as this future incredible person we want to be.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And one point that I just want to expand upon or just highlight is the consistency, for sure. So huge. I always used to have this saying that success is simple. It's just a matter of doing small daily tasks consistently. But it's so simple that people won't do it because it seems too simple. But you hit the nail on the head with this one, you said it quickly, so that's why I wanted to highlight it, was that consistency doesn't mean you're 100% perfect. Because I went down this road before where I would say, I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to do gratitude, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to write in my journal. And if I would miss one of those, then I would just let everything else fall apart. Yeah. So 80% is great. Don't beat yourself up if it's not 100. Just stay consistent with 80. That was really, really amazing.
And your body will love the fact that you're not punishing it for, or you're not punishing yourself because you didn't do 100%.
Yeah.
We're all, at the end of the day, trying to do our best. And our best doesn't mean 100. And even if you know the best doctor, the number 1 student in the school, they've never had 100% on a test. Never. I don't know anyone that can say, out of all my life, I've always got 100%.
Right.
So we do our best at what we know and what we can, and just give ourselves grace and space and forgiveness for not going all the way. But also consistently knowing that 40% is not enough. Yeah. Especially people who are in a crucial state.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's critical, you need to be in the 80s. Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And longer periods of time spent doing things you love than diminishing. Like I see people all the time who are sick who say, I don't have time to do all these things because I have kids, I have this. But at the end of the day, I had to wake up at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Like it was bad. It was hard. Like I would just crawl out of bed. And now sometimes 3:30, I'm up and ready for the day.
Yeah.
5 o'clock is my time, but 6 a.m. is like sleeping in,
Yeah.
But I did it because I had kids. I had 2 businesses to run. I had everything.
Yeah.
And I still had to put in the work.
Yeah, you gotta make time, especially when it's critical.
And I didn't do it 100%. I did it 80 to 90% of the time. And the stuff that was crucial for me, I did it before everybody woke up.
Yeah, you gotta find the time.
Yeah,
for sure. Anyways,
and asked for help.
Yeah, help for sure. You gotta have a guide. Without a mentor or a coach or somebody, you're just like a cork, floating in the ocean, attaching yourself to ideas that you think might work. So you really need to have someone that can walk you down that path.
I had to go through 2.5 years of juicing 4 liters of juice every day. I didn't have time for it.
Right.
But guess what I did? I paid my kids $2 and they juiced for me.
Right, yeah.
So I paid them. I said, I'll pay you $2 or sometimes $5 if it's more. And they got to buy their books and whatever they wanted, and they helped me.
Yeah, definitely. Anyways, all amazing.
Thank you.
Stuff, Nevianna. I'm super happy to have you on here. I think you provided a ton of great value for everyone that's listening. And I think, where I can probably leave this is that sometimes just starting is all the, power that we need to change our lives. We just got to get into action, start doing something. Don't let spirituality and this, the cloud of all these things that need to be done kind of hang over your head. Just start. Start with a little bit of meditation, start with some reflection in a journal, whatever it may be. Start with those 6 points that we highlighted on. Maybe just start with one of them, because action breeds action. And as you get further in, you're just going to want more. Like that's what I found with my spiritual path is, I have waves where I'm up and down, where
of course,
sometimes I'm like, I'm just in and I'm going there deep every day. And then sometimes I'm, even right now I'm in a little bit of a rut, and I'm, finding myself letting the old things slip in, like self-doubt and all these kinds of things. So it's a wave, but as long as the wave is continually moving upwards, you're in a good spot.
I find fear and doubt in my thoughts every day.
Yeah.
But at least I'm aware of it, and I understand how I can puppet me into behaviors that were old. Now they come and the stories come in my head, and I just kind of say, all right, but I'm not going to allow you to puppet me into behaviors that did not work for me before.
Definitely. Okay, well, that is Nevianna from Carrots and Dates. Make sure you guys go and check out Carrots and Dates. I'm sure everyone that's listening to this has already been there, but go back, because Nevianna is here sharing everything that she knows for 100% free. So if you want to give back, go get some Carrots and Dates and Nevianna.